All right. Welcome back to another episode.
Welcome. Pumped.
Yeah. New location. We're starting to do this thing where we travel a lot. New location every time.
We have locked ourselves in the guest bedroom. We don't know what's about to happen.
I don't know if we've locked ourselves in so much as been sent here.
It might get weird, dude.
I hope so.
Who knows?
You know,
Yeah, Sasha's
pants have already been
downstairs.
off. Who knows?
It's true. Your pants have been off. Oh, golly. Yeah, dude, that tattoo looks good. Zach
Thanks.
just got some new work.
Yeah.
Looks great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll keep it relatively quiet for the baby sleeping downstairs.
Yeah, that's right. Sasha just got her first dose of vaccinations, which is great.
Poor kid.
That's sad, dude.
Oh, yeah.
It's like they have this look of shock on their face first, and then it's just like
The scream.
oh, and you're just
scream.
man, this is sad.
Yeah.
You know?
When they get older, so I remember when they get older, like holding, like not holding him down
But
because
like,
he wasn't
keeping him
fighting,
steady.
but like I'm have Davey and I'm like close to him,
Yeah.
holding him so he doesn't move, but also like more like support type thing. But I remember like him kind of fighting or whatever. He was old enough to like, and I remember like him looking up at me like, "Why are you doing this?"
Dude,
Yeah, crushing.
that is soul crushing.
Yeah, but it's like, I mean, parent stuff the whole time is like, you're not going to like this, but it's what's better for you in the long run.
Right, but you just have no understanding of
Yeah.
that, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a trip. Luckily,
Yeah.
the lady was quick, dude. It
makes such a difference.
makes a difference. I thought she had just done one,
Like,
and then she was
bangs
done
them
with
out.
all three.
Yeah.
I was like, hell yeah. So, yeah, that's better. It's sad for the mama, too.
Have you seen the video? It's a doctor giving some kind of injection. Don't know if it's a vaccine or whatever, but he's there talking to the kid, and it's a like toddler,
Yeah.
young toddler, and he's like talking to him and like rubs his arm and like rubs his arm and rubs his leg and rubs his leg and rubs his arm, and like while he's doing all this stuff, does the injection, and the kid doesn't even know. No idea.
Wow.
I'm
That's
like,
impressive.
oh, and what a good practitioner.
What a great practitioner.
Like it's
man.
those types of things. Like we talk about strength coaches, good ones and bad ones. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't matter the field. There are bad ones and there are good ones.
Yes, and that's the subtleties of like, it's hard to understand how valuable that is
Mhm.
until you're with that person.
Yeah.
You know, like you're
Yeah.
never going to understand the value of that subtle skill he's
Mhm.
developed, right?
Because you're like, shots are shots and they hurt. And then
Right.
all of a sudden you're like, whoa, they don't have to.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. I'll
Yeah.
have to see that.
Yeah, I'll find
That's
it.
cool.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
We're going to hop right into it. We got excited about the episode.
Yeah.
We're going to run through several programs.
Yeah.
We've done a lot of stuff that are like bodybuilding
Yeah.
or hybrid programs and this, that.
Mhm.
We're going to hop into some very popular powerlifting programs.
I'm excited for this,
Yeah.
dude, because I think this is like, I don't know, when you came up with the idea, I was like, hell yeah, because this is where I think a lot of people that have entered the world of like really lifting for performance, most of them started with strength.
Agreed.
Most of them went from like, okay, I like lifting. I lift splits, bodybuilding style. I'm ready to take that next step. Usually that next step is some sort of strength program.
Yeah. And that's almost true regardless of gender.
Right.
Right. Like guys definitely are going to be at a higher percentage of running into the strength because it's one, you want to be stronger, but two, there's like some clout, right? If you go into a gym and you see somebody with 4 plates and they're squatting, it's different than somebody doing 225.
For sure. Yeah, it's like part of identity and ego.
Right,
You know?
right. A lot of women kind of more physique, but there's a lot of women, and I would say more so now, that lean into the powerlifting world and the strength stuff because there's also the physique benefits.
I would agree, man. I see a lot of women really enjoying getting stronger.
Yeah.
And Maya talks about it a lot. It's like, oh, it was cool to see that number go up.
Oh, yeah.
You know, there's a lot of value to that and a lot of motivation that comes from it. So,
I remember working in like collegiate sector and like, I think, right, the mentality that a male brings into the gym versus a female, like a male overestimates his ability, right?
Yes.
Right. I'm going to put too much weight on and I'm going to do quarter reps because that's impressive to somebody, I guess.
I was just watching that this morning at the gym, dude. It's like, oh my gosh.
But I think women, it's the other way. They underestimate their ability. And so like getting them doing it consistently to build confidence or having a coach or something to like, no, you're good. Do this. You're fine. And then really realizing what they're capable of is super cool.
Cool. Yeah. And that's again why like a strength program with a high school girls team or done over a year is a pretty magical thing to watch. What it does for a girl's confidence it's just pretty incredible. So I'm excited to get into it.
Highly recommend, if listeners, if you know, like, friends, daughters, sisters, things like that, like really has a massive impact out of the gym mentally. Like what you said, like a confidence booster, like it's a different thing that the benefits to that, like maybe some guys get it, but not to the same degree. Like,
Right.
oh, I'm a strong person. I got this,
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Yeah. I really have enjoyed that aspect of it. And I think like strength training is kind of the foundation of almost all sports performance programs.
Yes.
Like that's when you start going from like, oh, I lift and really no matter what I do will work, right? Because we know with hypertrophy, you got this big scale of effectiveness. When you start strength training, your scale of effective programming really shrinks, and you really need to start understanding deloads, intensity modifications,
Right.
working with variation in regards to specialty bars and stuff like that. And the foundation of all sports performance programs to be more athletic, there is a powerlifting essence in all of them.
Yeah.
Right. The undertone is powerlifting. And so I don't know, I'm just stoked because we haven't done a strength training program, and it's huge.
Yeah. Yeah. But before we hop in, question of the day.
Ooh, let's go.
What has been to date for you the thing you're most proud of from a lifting perspective that you've done?
Oh, that's good, dude. From a lifting perspective, I mean, I've cleaned 345.
That's heavy.
Yeah, that's pretty heavy.
That's heavy.
And it was a power clean, right? So it wasn't even like a full clean. So I'd say that's probably like.
Did you have to get down to get it, or did you catch it pretty high?
Dude, I'd catch it high.
So you had 405 in the tank.
Probably.
Dang,
I just
dude.
don't like.
Saquon Barkley, who?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Real, put me in the NFL. Man.
Let's go.
I would. Yeah. No, I don't want to pass in the NFL.
We have a kid now, so you don't want to get murdered.
Yeah, exactly. I value my, the gray space in between.
I've watched too many videos of Ray Lewis talking about murdering people.
For real.
Maybe on the football field, maybe not.
Maybe.
Who's to say?
Yeah, for real though. Yeah, dude. Yeah, I think a 345 clean would be my best.
Nice.
Yeah. What about you?
I mean, you know me, so I don't have anything I'm like awesome
stoked about.
No. But hitting 405 bench was like a good milestone.
That's a big bench.
That was good.
That's a big bench.
Yeah. I mean, not so much anymore, but because it's all like, how it is, like as soon as you tick off something, you're like, well, I know this dude does way more. So now I got to run that down.
Well, dude, I mean, you're talking about the world of powerlifting. Like that's entry level.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And like a 345 clean, that's nothing in the
like
world of Olympic lifting.
What's the gen pop? Like general population milestones in terms of strength, where they'll be like, that's good for a guy's like a 225 bench, a 315 squat, and a 405 dead.
Yeah.
Those are nothing. Like in the world of powerlifting, you're not catching a single second glance. No one's even going to notice you're lifting.
You're almost embarrassed to be there.
The dude's assuming you're warming up.
Yeah, the dude's assuming you're warming up, or like, oh, he's just starting.
Right. Right.
Like there's nothing to be proud of there.
No.
But in a commercial gym, for the average, person, that's decent.
If you're like, I haven't lifted in a commercial gym in a long time, but like bump those all up a plate and it's impressive in a regular gym. You will get an audience.
Yeah.
You're benching 315, you're squatting 405, you're deading 495. Somebody, probably multiple someone's are going to stop and watch.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. For us, we forget that's strong. Because number one, we've been that strong for a while. And number two, for us, we're like, we're really not.
No dudes that move way more weight.
Yeah.
So it's like, meh.
Yeah.
I remember at Utah, I came in after women's basketball lift with a women's basketball player who couldn't lift. I don't remember why. So I was taking her through the lift.
Yeah.
And one of the baseball guys was squatting with 225 on, and she had to like pick her jaw up off the ground. And I had to remind her, I was like, there's a girl on your team that squats 315. That's not impressive.
That's not impressive.
Yeah. She was like, it was like, she stopped walking. Was like, oh, yo. And I'm like, that's nothing.
Maybe she was just looking at the booty cheeks.
Maybe she was looking at the dude, not the weight.
Dude, I was, speaking of commercial gyms, this is a side tangent before we get into it, but I've been lifting at one on paternity leave.
Right.
And so I've been exposed to the things that happen. And I just constantly see things of like, oh, they need to listen to chocolate. This is bad. But this dude was going deadlifts, and I couldn't tell if he was trying to do an RDL or a regular deadlift. Just bang, bang,
Oh, getting
off
the
the
bounce.
ground. He did 12 deadlifts and then went over and did 12 hanging leg raises and then did 12 bicep curls and then did 12 each leg split squat jumps and did that for 3 rounds. And he was like, and I'm just sitting there like, this is why people get hurt, and this is not effective.
No.
You are exercising, not training. And if you're going to do that, why are you deadlifting? That was my big question. Your deadlift serves no value in this thing, right?
Yeah.
And it just continuously goes back. And that man probably, I'm making a lot of assumptions here, so they're educated assumptions, was thinking he was doing something functional, right? Like, I'm doing split squat jumps with deadlifts.
And I'm staying busy, and I'm sweaty.
And it just was like, and when he was landing, because, plyos are, when you start studying plyometrics and the way they should be done, they're a little bit more complicated than most people think they are.
Sure.
When you land, you need to land quiet, right? This deceleration. This dude was like, boom. You're deadlifting, your feet are loud, like you were going to break something on me. Just made me think of that. So, anyways, when you deadlift, don't do a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah, it's weird pairing bicep curls.
Yeah, and like, dude, if you were going heavy and you're doing bicep curls,
I'd be worried about popping a bicep.
Yes, golly.
I'd be worried about it.
Anyways, don't be that guy. If you're listening to this podcast, you should know better than that shit.
It's tough too, being somebody that like is in our position, like do it for a profession, because anyone, I don't care who it is, like walks up and starts giving another man advice at a gym, just in terms of ego, they're going to be like, not going to listen. Right. Like, who are you? Get away from me.
Right. And so I'm not saying
I don't say anything to anybody.
No. And it's hard, dude, because then you hear conversations. I'm always listening, because I don't lift with headphones. So you're always listening to conversations, and I'm just hearing all this nonsense. I had to stop myself. I'm like, Parker, do not do anything, because it was on a separate tangent, and it snowed here this week. And I went to the gym, and there was like 4 or 5 guys there, and they were talking about how they're like, oh, I've driven in Colorado before. They just went on all these tangents about how they're like, I've snowboarded in Montana. The snow's nothing to me. And I can't remember the comments they were saying, but I was so tempted to be like, dude, you don't know shit about the West. I was from the West, Just go on.
Have you driven down the road where you can't see because of the snow on either side? Then don't talk to me.
Exactly, dude. Come on. Have you been in the mountains on snowshoes and split boards and climbed, ice climbed? Yeah. Then don't talk to me about the West.
Do you know about the things you're supposed to pack in your car in case you can't drive and you don't freeze to death?
Yes, for real, dude. That was the douchey side of us, though. But I was like, oh, man, you guys are killing me.
What's the flexing? It's the flexing on anything when you shouldn't be.
Yeah.
It's that, like, about snow, about academic things, about literally anything. If you're not that guy, it's the dude that wears the stringer tank with no muscle in, like, the mall.
Yes.
Like, dude, what are you doing? Who are you advertising for? Yeah. There's nothing to show. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing?
And then it makes you want to go be like, well, actually, let me tell you. But then that makes you a douche, too.
Yes.
So it's just
so the dude walks around delusional, thinks everybody thinks I'm the coolest. And I'm like, yeah, sure, man.
That's what it is. Yeah. But, man, sorry, I got us off on a big tangent. I was thinking about that, though. The snow was nice, dude.
It was nice to see.
It was nice.
Kids freaked out.
Yeah.
Out here in North Carolina, they shut down everything for a week.
They did.
Because they got 4 inches, but whatever.
We'll deal with it.
Yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah.
I'm not complaining. Especially here. I mean, more help, all that good.
For sure.
You ready?
Let's do it.
Okay. So we're going to run through several programs. The first of which is super, super popular. And maybe some listeners know of this program and don't know they know it, as the 5x5, Strong List 5x5.
Okay.
And it is what the title says, right? You're running sets of 5 with reps of 5. The lower volume is going to immediately or should immediately tell you, like, if you're listening to all these, you'll notice some trends, and some of those trends are lower volume. You're probably working on strength or power.
Right. I guess that's probably important to point out first.
Yeah. When
you're doing a strength program, how is it different than a bodybuilding program?
That's a good point, right? So the immediate thing, and like we've already always said, right, the point of this is to educate and equip people to be able to make more informed decisions about what they're doing in terms of their health, and anything that entails.
Yeah.
Right. So if you look at a program that's being marketed and they tell you it's for strength and you're seeing things like 4x12, 4x15, like immediately that should ring some alarm bells of like, no,
Yep.
that's
C-bumps.
yeah, right. Last episode, right? Like if you're working on strength, those rep ranges are too high. The reason that's the case, so like the rationale behind it, is if you're working on strength, you need to be working in higher percentages of intensity. Mm-hmm. What that means is you're working with weight closer to your either estimated or tested 1 rep max.
Yeah, the most weight you could ever lift.
Exactly.
You're lifting a percentage of that, and it's a higher percentage than what you need to do for hypertrophy.
Right. You're looking at the lowest range is probably 75%, but more realistically, probably 80+% of your maximum ability.
Okay.
And if that's the case, if you're working at, say, 85, 87% of your maximum ability, you're not going to be able to perform many reps.
Right.
Because it's near your maximum ability. You're quicker to fatigue, and so you won't be able to do as many reps. That's the rationale for the rep range being lower.
Okay.
Now, to get some volume while training for strength, that means we need to bump sets up.
Right.
Right. So we'll talk about another program in this episode where you have things that are like 10 sets of 3. Right. Like same concept, the rep range are lower, but to get all of those touches with that with that intensity, you have to modify things to get your volume, which is bumping sets up.
Right. And what's the value of doing a program like this versus doing a program that is 4 sets of 8, 4 sets of 12, right? Like, why would I move to a strength program instead of just a general, hypertrophy or lean mass program? Say it, I got to plug the computer.
Yeah. So there's a couple of reasons. One, and the simplest one, is the goal. Right? If our goal is to, build some more muscle mass, it's not to say that a strength program doesn't do that. A power program doesn't do that.
Yeah.
They do that. It's just not the primary goal. So you will build lean tissue, you'll build muscle while training for strength, just not to the same degree as training for size, which would be hypertrophy, which is those higher volumes that are accumulating. You're approximating fatigue at higher volumes more consistently.
Right. And so like the value of strength, right? Like what do you get? What good comes from doing strength versus a hypertrophy or power program? Like, why do I want to be stronger? Right? Other than just like lifting more weight is cool, but there's some other, tertiary benefits provided from strength programs that aren't provided in hypertrophy or power programs, right? Like more bone density, right? You get some of that from hypertrophy, no doubt, but it's exponentially faster and occurs at higher rates during
connective tissue development.
Yeah, tendons and ligaments, right? Yeah. And then there's a much more, if you're talking of performance, when you're talking strength, right? You're talking more ability, like it's more of a nervous system thing. So more potential for transfer for speed development, right? I just call it general resilience. Right? When you're stronger, you're just a little bit more resilient to injury as compared to just training for size.
Yep, 100%.
So
100%.
That's the value in it, right?
And normally, like we've talked about different methodologies, right? A lot of block type approaches is you'll spend time developing the tissue for 6 to 12 weeks, 6 to 15 weeks, and then shifting into a strength block to get stronger and then moving into like something power and more sport based.
Right.
I don't think that's the ideal way to train really anybody anymore. But that used to be the law of the land.
That was it, right? That is periodization, right? And so I kind of think of it as, we're building tissue and then we're teaching the body how to use the tissue. That obviously is not taken in out of context is not a completely true statement. But like you're building the nervous system within the tissue after you've built the tissue. Hypertrophy, build the tissue. Strength, build the neurons to use the tissue to its most effective.
Right. Motor recruitment is a big one.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we've mentioned before, like the newbie gains type thing when you train for strength of like you'll make big jumps in the beginning. That's not your muscle. That's your central nervous system being able to more efficiently fire and move things.
Right. And I think there's one other thing in strength, and I'm sorry to keep us off,
No,
but I just
no.
want to realize people to realize why it's valuable. There's a lot of sports where there's weight classes.
Yes.
And there's weight classes you don't want to put on too much muscle. Nope. The goal is to put on the most amount of muscle and
to
then
be the strongest you
that
possibly can
for that weight class, right? So if I'm fighting at 205, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I put on so much muscle mass that I can't get below 205,
problems.
That's a problem, right? So you get you put on muscle mass to get you right at that 204, and then you start doing strength training. So now you're not building more muscle per se, but you're maximizing every ounce of that muscle mass you have. Right. So strength training is huge for weight class sports.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a really big thing. Fighters, wrestlers,
strength and power tends to be that.
Power. Yeah. Power especially, which is just kind of like that other, you're utilizing even more efficiently your nervous system. Right?
Firing fast now.
Yeah.
Because strength, right, is going to be slow.
Right.
And we mean that in terms of the broad spectrum of speed. Like there are guys that move heavy weights fast.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's an Olympic lifter, Losh, out of Georgia, that moves insane weight.
Dude.
Insane weight, like it's nothing.
I know. Right? Cheese, wine, and meat, dude.
Right.
Georgians.
Yeah. Andre Milanichev, like his squats look like he'd squat out almost 1,000 and make it look like it was like a 400-pound squat.
Disgusting.
So there are guys that move things fast, but if you take that, like, Andre Milanichev's squat or Losh's, like, if you compared Andre Milanichev's squat to Losh's clean, not even close in terms of speed.
Yeah.
Right. Losh is moving it dramatically faster.
Right.
It's just because of what they're doing.
Right. Speed is a spectrum.
Yeah.
There's that force velocity curve, right? High force, low speed.
Yep.
And then there's the curve of really high speed, a little less force, right? And
it's the same reason you see, like, in strongman, you got like Eddie Hall or Hathor Bjornsson deadlifting over 1,000. You got, Bolton squatting over 1,000. You got all these dudes doing like insane numbers. And then you go over to the Olympic side of lifting and you see their insane numbers are in the 500s.
Right.
They're moving it way faster because they're putting it over their head.
Right.
So it's just different.
It's just different.
Yeah. But back on like the 5x5.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you, like, because I know this is an area you like. We don't really know where their program comes from, but like, who popularized it?
The dude I like, Reg Park.
Yeah.
So when you were whipping up these slide decks, I had completely forgotten about Reg Park.
Dude is an OG.
Yeah. So I mean, 40s, 50s, 60s is when
right pre-Arnold.
Yeah.
So he was right before Arnold kicked off.
So 50s bodybuilder, right? But utilize this programming quite often.
Yeah.
Right?
Listeners might know him. He was in movies, like 7 movies or something like that. The original Hercules.
Yeah.
He was Hercules.
Looked great. For me, if I could look like anything, it'd be like Reg Park.
Solid.
Looks great. Not, it was again before, Arnold was really muscular for his time. So Reg Park was even less muscular, but looked, you just go watch the movies.
He looked jacked.
Great. Yeah, he looked jacked. And so he is one of the first kind of founders because, Joe Weider was all about volume. And he threw out the 5x5. And in 1958, he published the book Strength and Bulk Training for Weightlifters and Bodybuilders.
Which we should bring back the terminology.
Yeah.
Bulk training.
Bulk. People would love that. Squat 605, bench 500, dead 700.
Dang.
Super impressive.
Super impressive.
Because in the 50s,
as a bodybuilder too.
Yeah, I'm sure he had some gear, but I don't know. Like, it wasn't the gear like they got now. You know, and those are great numbers. Yeah. So 5x5 is something just go look up Reg Park. I don't think a lot of people know who he is.
Yeah,
there's some old school badasses out there.
I feel like everybody of our era kind of stops with Arnold.
Yeah,
it's like there are dudes before him that were savages.
Yeah,
not to take anything away from Arnold, but like he built on the shoulders of people before him, and they're like incredible guys.
Right. Yeah. And even with Arnold, dude, like Frank Zane doesn't get enough attention.
No.
Frank Zane was awesome. Yeah. Columbo, freak. There was even though it was in that era, Mike Mincer, man.
Yeah.
Like, Arnold is awesome, but there's some other badasses in there.
100%. 100%. And so basically, like a basic structure for 5x5 is, keep in mind we're talking strength. And so strength with that powerlifting background is going to focus things around 4 lifts.
Yeah.
Squat, bench, dead, and an overhead press.
Right. That's something, when you move from bodybuilding to strength, you forget splits.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We've had a conversation with another guy. Like, you have got to get splits out of your head.
Splits are a bodybuilding thing.
That's a bodybuilding thing.
Yep.
Now you are focusing around lifts or movement patterns. It's the first step in that transition.
Mm-hmm. I would say a good way to differentiate like basic philosophy for programming is if it's a bodybuilding program, you are looking at muscle development, areas of development. My back needs to get bigger. Right. My legs need to get bigger. So you're worried about muscular groups, and now that naturally comes into splits, right? Like, what am I prioritizing? Things like that. You get into strength, it's lift focused,
right?
Where you're moving compound movements. Generally, you're worried about heavier loads, and so your structure looks like, how am I recovering from these sessions so that I can do them again?
Right.
And then, like sport training, power training is sport training. Olympic lift's a sport. Olympic lifting is a sport. So power training now, I would say, is more about like movement patterns and speed.
Yeah.
Like, so if one of those things is, without looking at a program, if you talk to the person that wrote it and they're like, well, splits, you're like, okay, bodybuilding.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, we're lift focused, your strength, your powerlifting, strongman. Mm-hmm. And if it's, well, we're working on, decreasing the time of this lift and we're worried about moving things fast. It's like, okay, power.
Yeah.
It's a good way to differentiate it.
Yeah. And so you were saying 5x5, basically you're doing bench, squat, dead 3 days a week.
Which is a lot.
Yeah, that's a ton. And it's full body.
Yep.
Right? So that's number one. It's full body 3 days a week.
Yep.
You're benching, you're squatting, you're deadlifting with whatever accessories
you need.
You decide, mm-hmm. right? And you, in a powerlifting program, you should build your accessories based off of the weak spots of your lift.
Excellent point.
Right? Like, you struggle out of the bottom of a squat. Now you're doing pause squats. Mm-hmm. Okay, you tend to hinge at the hips too much when you squat. Okay, mm-hmm. you're doing quad development, mm-hmm. high bar, right? Things like that. You're going close grip bench press.
If your tricep, like if lockout's a problem, then triceps. So we're going to close grip it. And so it's like, where are you failing? Mm-hmm. Why are you failing? And then we're going to do things to fix that.
Right. Yep. Right. And so that's, again, a powerlifting structure. Yep. Right. And so with the 5x5, bench squat dead 3 days a week. Mm-hmm. What do you know? What intensity?
So that's a thing. That's a thing with a lot of these is there are with 5x5 because it's been around so long. Yeah. There are a lot of people have used it.
Yeah,
and you'll notice, like listeners will notice this if as we talk about it, but also like if you guys go out and start to look at some of on your own, you're going to notice like, okay, there's 5x5 and then there's 20 variation programs.
Right.
Because, and this is true of a lot of programming, but especially true I've seen in strength training, is somebody will take a program like 5x5, that methodology, and make it theirs, and then call it that.
Yeah. We've rebranded the mm-hmm. same thing so many times. Mm-hmm. That's a really good point, mm-hmm. too. And it can get, that's why we do this. Because it can get confusing.
100%. You get on like, wait, I got on to get the 5x5 program. Why are there 30 Excel sheet options?
Right. And 5x5 for your butt cheeks.
Right.
Dude,
right.
I do 5x5 for my toe training. My toe spacers 5x5.
Right. Spread the floor.
And I think like you said, dude, beforehand, I think we kind of breezed over it because I was rambling. But you're going 5 sets of 5 3 times a week. So if we break this down, each day, you're doing 25 reps at each movement. Mm-hmm. Over the week, that's 75 reps mm-hmm. of bench press, squat, and deadlift. If you are doing really heavy loads each time, 75 reps at a high intensity is going to smoke check your ass.
Yeah.
Right? Like most of the programs I've written, I'm doing 30 reps or below mm-hmm. at 80% or higher through mm-hmm. a week, mm-hmm. right? Because of that fatigue that comes up. Each time you get under the bar with a lot of weight, there is a risk.
Yes.
You are, putting yourself in a somewhat risky situation to develop this adaptation you found valuable. That's a lot of getting under the bar mm-hmm. for risk, right? And mm-hmm. so that's a really high volume strength program.
It is.
I think. Yes, you're getting rest. Yes, you're only doing 5 sets or 5 reps, but 5x5 is a lot, and especially with that frequency.
Oh yeah, it gets
3 times a week.
Yeah, that's I think one of the things is, right, like, let's say I write a strength program.
Yeah.
And I write a 5x5.
Yeah.
So you get my 5x5 program and you look at it and you go, I'm going to die doing this.
Yeah.
So we're going to do 5x5, 5x5, 3x5, 2x5, 1x5 deload.
Yeah.
And now you call it Parker's 5x5.
Yeah.
Right? Because we just adjusted it.
Right.
We cleaned up some of it's a lot of what we do here, right? Like, you take a program, you look at it and you're like, this is suboptimal in these ways.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to fix them.
Right.
Right. But there are definitely things that I didn't account for. So somebody else grabs it and they're like, ooh, these things are suboptimal. I'm going to fix them. And it just gets rebranded over and over and over again.
Right.
And all of those programs are still out there. Right. You got old kind of like devoted, nostalgic people that are like, no, the original 5x5 is 5x5. And that's what I do.
Yeah.
And they're like, science, like evidence-based. Anybody that says evidence-based is a stupid dork. And it's like, okay, sometimes. Yeah, but not all the time. And
not all the
good
time.
luck on that doing 5x5 till you die.
Yeah, and you're doing evidence-based training anyways because some dude said it worked because it worked for him.
That's evidence. Exactly. It's been around and tried for so long.
I hate that. Like science-based lifting. All lifting is science-based. If it worked for someone, that's science.
Yeah.
Shut your mouth.
Yeah. N equals 1. That dude did an individual study.
Yeah, golly, that drives me nuts. But do you program 5x5 for any of the programs?
Almost never.
Okay. Why don't you program it for your
there's not because I don't think it's good.
Yeah.
But most of my programming now, I don't program for anybody that's exclusively looking for strength.
Yeah.
All of the people I work with in terms of my professional life, like for work, have a very specific job requirement.
Yeah.
And strength is very important. And I will tell you that demographic loves to train strength. There's dudes that smash weight.
Yeah.
Right. Like, shout out the Third Rack crew. I mean, those guys smash, they go hard.
Yeah.
But some private clients and everything are athletes.
Yeah.
So again, strength is important, but it's part of the picture.
Right. And when you're doing 5x5, because you're doing so much volume, you are putting so much of your energy into strength. Mm-hmm. You're taking away your ability to do other stuff. Yep. Right? Like there's not much room after that 5x5 3 times a week for anything else.
I can tell you right now, like if I'm on a 5x5 program, when I get done with those 3 lifts, I'm not going to want to do accessories.
Right.
I'm going to want to crawl into a corner and cry.
Right. If you did those sets well. Now, if you just did those at like 65%.
Toast, good.
Whatever, but again.
And then again, that would be a modification. Yeah. And that's a reasonable modification. Yeah. If you're like, ooh, like that, I'm probably going to hurt myself. I'm not ready for that. I'm going to tone it down and crush my accessories as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
Have you ever just used the 5x5 rep scheme and just kind of interplaced it throughout?
For sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
I think that's how most people use 5x5. Yeah. They're like, oh, I'm going to do 5x5 sets of bench and then I'm going to do chest for the rest of the day.
Right.
Right. Or I'm going to do 5x5 squats and then hit legs the rest of the day. And they just hit each lift once throughout the week and do 5 sets of 5.
Yep.
I think that's a good use of
I do too.
Because you're getting a good blend. You're getting high volume strength work, which will make you sore. You'll get stronger and you'll get some lean tissue development as well.
Another super easy modification would be, and this is a big strength thing, is stealing concepts from other people that have done it well, right? Like, so 5x5, the way it's written out sounds like it is going to be pretty rough. I don't know how well it's going to work. So I'm going to take the 5x5 structure, but I'm going to steal a conjugate or west side method, and I'm going to have a dynamic day, and I'm going to have a max effort day.
Boom.
Right. So one of those 5x5s, it's going to be lower percentage, move it fast. And one of those 5x5 days is going to be, we are going to crush it. It's going to be heavy.
Yeah. That's a great utilization of modifications. Yeah. And so, like you said, man, just take the bones and modify them how you need. Would you recommend the true old school Reg Park 5x5 to anybody?
No.
I wouldn't either.
No.
I really just wouldn't, if your whole life was lifting, I mean, even then I'm just like, I think we've came up with other ways that are more effective.
There are better ways to do it.
Yeah.
And it's on credit to all these dudes. The reason we know that now is, yeah, there's some research and stuff like that, but you and I both know, right? The stuff that gets theoretically talked about,
Yeah.
there are strength coaches putting into practice before that came out.
Right.
They have like real world experience of like, ooh, here's the problem with that, or here's why that works really good, or here's the tweaks I would do if I did it again.
Right.
And credit to all these dudes. That's why we know that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, you got like Penlay has a variation of 5x5. Penlay row is a type of bent over row, like it's named after him. This dude was running somebody else's program, has stuff named after him, like guaranteed, like his modifications, right? No, he knew a little bit more. He made a couple adjustments.
Yeah.
It's just how it works.
Yeah, it is. And I think that was Reg Parter, that was innovative at the time, dude. That was really innovative. And it's still...
And credit to him to contributing of putting a book out about how to do it.
Yes.
Which is phenomenal.
Yep. This led to stuff like that. Like you said, this led to our knowledge now.
Yeah.
So I think overall 5x5, very foundational, everyone has utilized it or understands it, whether they realize it or not.
Yep.
Back in its old roots, I agree. I wouldn't use it at all, but I take 5x5 quite often and put it into, especially I call it like a bridge program. I know your coach Charlie uses that terminology. Like, we just came off a hypertrophy block. Mm-hmm. We're not touching, I don't want you touching 90% plus yet.
Yep.
But I want us to kind of ride this like, oh, we're starting to flirt with strength, but we're still doing some work capacity. It is great in that space.
I agree. I agree.
I think it's awesome, but I'm adding other accessories. I'm doing 30 reps per lift of the big ones.
Yeah.
You know, throughout a week, not 75.
Or I'm going to run 5x5 by name only, but I'm going to program percentages like 5-3-1.
Yeah. Boom. Yeah. Something
right.
Like
so
that.
you're really doing 3 working sets. The first 2 are warm up.
Yeah. That's a good idea. Yeah. Just again, that's why you pay for a coach.
That's why you pay for a coach.
This is what true fitness professionals should look like.
Yeah. This isn't like a tiny glimpse of the amount of like thought and process that goes into picking something as simple as like how we're going to program your bench press over the next 6 weeks.
Right. And yes, hopefully this enlightens people that, holy shit, it's a little bit more. A good coach it's much more complicated than you would think. You know? And if you're working with a trainer or your coach that you know, you're having these conversations and it doesn't sound like this, then your trainer or your local fitness professional is not worth their salt.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
100%.
What's the next method?
Your favorite.
Home. God bless Texas.
That's right.
With his own hand.
The Texas method.
Down angels from the promised land. Texas method,
the
baby.
Texas method.
Uh-huh.
I would say a polarizing figure now in the fitness like space of whether he was valuable or whether not. Mark Ripito. So he's most known for starting strength.
Yeah. Which is weird because I had never even heard of starting strength until 3-4 years ago.
Really?
Never even heard of it. I knew Mark Ripito for his contributions to articles in T Nation, which were all great.
Yep.
So I was like, these are great articles. So when I found starting strength and heard like, you start to understand why that might not be the best methodology.
Yeah.
And then you see the controversy around it. I had no idea, so it's weird. But
I can't I think I'd gone through the book, but it was when like you're an undergrad and you're just consuming books at like a pretty high rate.
Yeah.
And so it's like, oh, another one. Like, oh, that was interesting.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until later that I got exposed to like, I think it's my perception of it is mostly his dedication to his own product.
Yeah.
That is why some people kind of take issue with like, he was like, well, it's the best. And you're like, well, what about this? And you're like, shut up, it's the best.
Right.
But,
and there's, hopefully this conversation, listeners could see why that's a problem. Because look at what the modifications you have to make contextually. You know, there's so many considerations that to say one methodology is the best is a very silly thing.
Yeah, because even the best program that you write for me is going to need to be modified for the next person.
Right.
Because it's different.
Right.
So, yeah. But definitely like large contribution, like that we're talking about him at all, right? Like
Right.
large contributions to the field.
Yeah, I mean West Side level contributions, right? And I don't even people who lift probably don't even understand how much thought and trial went into figuring out what works before it's reached the general public.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
West Side's huge, Ripeto's huge. I
Mhm.
mean, they're up there with like Dan John, stuff like that.
Yeah, big
So,
names.
Big
Big
names.
names.
Yeah. So what's the Texas method?
The Texas method is 3 days a week. Again,
Hopefully you guys are noticing a trend with strength training. It's not 6 days a week.
no, and this we talked about it briefly before, is because the higher intensity requires more recovery.
Right. So we got two most foundational popular methods, both at training 3 times a week.
Yep. The thing that I would say that you got Texas method has on 5x5 is some things we've already talked about of how we would modify it, is you have different emphasis on different days.
Okay.
Right. So you have a high volume day, typically with the Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday is the structure. And Monday you got high volume day. So strength is still the focus, but you're accumulating volume.
So you're doing a lot of sets, or you're flirting with ranges of 5 and 6, maybe 7 and 8, barely.
Maybe, but
probably not.
Yeah, but
Okay.
we're bumping. Oh, sets up. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But reps.
Rep range is staying down, and we're running sets up.
Yeah.
They call Wednesday like a recovery day,
Uh-huh.
and this is going to be where we probably nitpick the most because it isn't really recovery. But you had a day in between.
Yeah.
So maybe fine.
Maybe. Well, dude, Texans don't need recovery.
Exactly. I always forget that. Yeah.
We're better than everybody. So.
Yeah. You guys still have the Alamo, right? See, you won.
We won.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone died, but we still won.
We got it. Yeah.
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 That's the motivation.
I don't remember that being called Mexico.
Yeah. And Davy Crockett was a Texan. He didn't come down from Tennessee.
Definitely.
He was Texan, damn it.
Yeah. Wore a cowboy hat, not a coonskin cap.
Yeah, that's right.
And then Friday, which for obvious reasons will be the thing we have the most problem with, is your high intensity day with the general kind of subtext goal of setting a new PR weekly.
I don't like it.
Yeah,
I don't like it. Well, because why would I do my high volume first, number one, on Monday, and then try to roll around Friday after I'm probably still a little smoked? Like, people don't realize, dude, like, if you really work hard in a session, especially if you do your full body in a day, there's a long window of recovery till you're ready to go again.
You might feel, I'm good, I'm recovered, and then you get under a bar and your central nervous system is still shut.
Right.
You can't you take, and anybody that's had this experience, right? Like, hit us up and tell us about it on Instagram or whatever. But right, you go super heavy on a day, you give yourself a couple days break, and you get back under the bar and you walk out 70%, and it feels like the earth.
Yes.
Yep. Because you are still not there.
You're not ready. I think a fun test would do the grip strength
dynamometer.
Yep. So go grab a grip strength test.
Yep.
Just use it, right? And if you're going to do strength training, squeeze every day, right?
Yep.
And squeeze before you start. Let's say you get 100 pounds, right? In theory, you should, your nervous system will tell you, right?
You should be plus or minus 15.
Right. And then there's going to be days where you're squeezing as hard as you can and you're touching 50.
Yeah.
That's a sign your nervous system is fried.
That's a great point.
It's a great tool to use if you're starting to flirt with how do I know if I'm recovered or not? That's a simple tool.
And an easy way to check, right? Like Whoop, expensive.
Yeah.
Your Aura Ring, expensive.
Yeah.
Dynamometer squeeze, not really.
Not expensive and almost more tried and true because there's less algorithms involved.
Yep.
It's one measure
and it's individual to you.
Yes. And we know grip strength is directly related with your CNS.
Yep.
We know that.
Yep.
Right. So, that's a fun way of testing it. But yeah, I don't love, I've done the Texas method along with you. I don't love it.
No.
I don't like lifting heavy on Friday.
No.
I hate it. I don't know.
I would much rather do volume.
Yeah. Friday's party, right? And the weekend I don't have to work. I can recover and rest. I don't care if I'm a little sore for the weekend. I don't know. I really don't enjoy. I hated lifting heavy on Fridays. I want to do that on Wednesdays or Mondays. And setting a PR weekly for a well-trained individual is
not realistic at all.
Not realistic.
We'll give Ripito some credit here. He doesn't say this is an advanced lifting program.
Yeah.
He says this is an intermediate.
Okay.
I don't like it as an intermediate program either.
Yeah.
But more digestible if you're in an area where it's like we're still making pretty significant gains on a regular basis, right?
Yeah.
We haven't like tapped out some area where we need to accrue more muscle tissue,
Yeah.
or clean up technique, all the, you know, things like that. So maybe, but still, the weekly thing, I don't care the degree to which you are a lifter. If we're not talking like rep records, like rep PRs, we're talking actual weight PRs, I'm going to have a problem with it.
Real problem.
It's just, and it's too much testing.
Yeah.
It's too much testing.
Way too much testing, because there's always a psychological element of testing.
Yep.
Right? All right, I got to do this, right? Like this is the measure, was my week successful or not?
Yeah.
Right? And you get to a point where you're not hitting these weight PRs. You're like, I'm not successfully training. Like there's motivation aspects that get shot up, you know, there's a bunch of other stuff that comes along with it. Oh, sorry.
And take, right? Like, okay, structure wise, let's have a little bit of a view. Monday, we do volume. Wednesday, right? Like we're still doing work.
Yeah.
It's not, by no means is it like we're just taking the day off to recover. That's not what it means. It's like you're doing a real lift. You're just not doing a bunch of volume or taking something to failure.
Yeah.
Okay. So day off and a lift, fine. And now you really want to crush, because who doesn't want to set PRs? And if the goal is to set PRs, I'm going to do my lift Saturday.
Yeah.
Right. I did volume on Monday. I did a real lift on Wednesday. I'm supposed to PR.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna do it on.
That's a good adjustment.
On Saturday.
I like that.
But now I just set a new max.
Yeah.
I'm shot. I get a day off, and now I got to do volume again because it's Monday. Okay, so now I do it Friday. Like it's just.
Yeah, I don't love it, and I don't even love, like, it kind of comes down to the point of within strength training. I don't like to think of it within the week. I like to think of 2 weeks. I don't want to fit all my strength in 1 week and restart. I want to fit my strength in 2 weeks and restart, because that gives you more windows for recovery.
I know a lot of dudes do 10-day rotations.
Yeah, like something like that, because these are the issues you run into.
Yeah.
And again, with most powerlifting, and especially with this, I mean, just the tendonitis issues of trying to hit that heavy load all the time. And there's just a lot of issues I have with it, but
definitely seems like a great way to hurt yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. So have you ever done the Texas program?
Yeah.
And you wouldn't recommend it to anybody? Yeah.
No.
Me either.
No. There is, and again, like the last one, many modifications, right? Because a person looks at it and goes, well, Mark Ripetoe's respectable. I like the program. I want to do it, but these things are causing me issues. Maybe it's I'm susceptible to tendonitis in my elbow from benching, or maybe it's like my back really starts to go if I'm doing a lot of deads.
Yeah.
Right. So a guy makes modifications, super normal. And one of the guys that we like a lot, Chad Wesley Smith, started Juggernaut Training Systems, has a modification that he's done on it. He calls it the Cowboy Method.
Yep.
And one critique of Texas Method is the low volumes.
Yeah.
Right. So a lot of strength training in my mind is logistical issues, right? Like you said, you need a 14-day rotation. I know guys do 10-day rotations because it's tough to fit stuff in, right? And it's also tough when you're doing strength training to make sure you're getting the adequate volume to build,
right? Because
the intensities are so high. You're like, I did 4 sets of 2, and I feel like I need to get out of here on a stretcher,
right?
So you just don't do the same kind of volume. So like the Cowboy Method is like increased volumes on specifically squats. So he does Monday squats, low intensity, high volume. Wednesdays are front squats, medium intensity, medium volume. And then Friday or Saturday, he does back squats, high intensity, low volume.
Yeah. Just adding the variation of movement is going to address a lot of things.
Yeah.
You know, like, same movement pattern all the time, same loading pattern all the time. It's going to be a little less issue, a little less, not risk, but just less potential for overuse injuries and things like that. And it's nice for your own headspace of having some training variety, but following the same structure.
Right.
Right.
And I like one thing that he does that I think is very subtle, and even a lot of coaches miss, is so his Wednesday's recovery day, right, for Texas Method. So he does Chad adjustment is medium volume, medium intensity, but he changes the movement to front squat, which is naturally going to down regulate the amount of weight you're going to do because it's a different movement. You don't have as much touch with it. You're going to have to go lower to do it proficiently, all those types of things.
Right.
So I really like that.
I didn't even think about that. That's a good point.
I like that one. Go ahead.
I forgot what I was going to say.
So, I mean, like another thing I think that listeners will like catch is I think hypertrophy programs can look a little like simplistic, but be complicated.
Mm-hmm.
Similar with strength programs, but they're going to look even more simplistic.
Yes.
Even like super, like a lot of people look at a strength program and like, is that it?
Yeah.
We're only doing 3 things. It's like, talk to me after.
Right. It's a really good point, dude. It's bench squat dead. How hard can it be?
Yeah, 5 by 5, I'm going to be in and out.
Mm-hmm.
Nope.
Yeah, and that was my point is, and this is with all powerlifting programs, man, but especially when you think of high intensity in a day, you need to think of how long you're going to be in the gym. That's one thing you don't pay attention to. You see, 8 sets of 2, cool. At 80%, 87%, whatever, dude, you are going to take 3 minutes, 4 minutes between those, at least between those sets, right? That's you squatting and only squatting for like 40, 50 minutes after your warm up, dude. So like, that's another thing that is a unforeseen logistical factor. There's going to be a lot of time spent in the gym, especially for high rep or high sets, low reps.
You ain't getting out and in and out.
No, and that's not with any specific program we've talked about. That's just strength training in general.
Yes.
Right.
Because of the longer recovery periods.
Yes. Right. Right. And on none of these programs do you see extra running, extra conditioning, extra bodybuilding. Like I don't think. There are some ways you can hybridize strength programming, but man, you are doing the minimum effective volume for strength, not touching these kind of volumes and sets.
You did the small off program with me, right?
A little bit for a couple of weeks.
So when Parker and I were interning at Utah, Smolov is a very famous squat program. There's some variations for bench and things like that, but it's most famous. 15-week program for squat. And there's other things that you do. The squat is the main program, but you put your other movements, bench or whatever, in there. And you know me, I am notorious for doing like a couple weeks of a program and stopping, or doing the first week over forever. Like I'll do like week 1 and miss a day, so I got to do it again. And miss a day and got to do it again. But I did the full program. I was super diligent about it.
Well done.
But to your point is I started with everything, right? Like I was doing the small off squat program, and then I had my bench stuff. I think I was just like running 5-3-1 on everything else. I think it was by week 3, I dropped everything but the squat. Because it was survival. I
couldn't smoked, no energy. Yeah, that's a good point.
And I'm always in my head thinking about the next day of what I got to do. So I just did, 6 sets at, 87%. And tomorrow I got 5 sets at, 87% again, or like, it's just, so it's like, I'm just trying to survive. And I think a lot of strength programs, if they're not programmed for you specifically, you need to get in a framework, in a mindset that's like, some of it is going to be a little bit of survival because you just get smashed.
Right. And it's a weird smash. It's not a sore smash. No. It's I'm exhausted. My back hurts. I'm low motivated. I'm tired. I don't want to get under this heavy barbell again. It's like a nervous system crash. And that's a different fatigue, than just like, I'm sore as shit.
I think it's one of the reasons like a lot of people give strength athletes, which I don't include bodybuilding in a strength athlete. Like, so powerlifting, strongman, those types of things. A lot of guys, Highland Games, guys get grief about being heavy, about being fat. And it's like, one of the best ways to recover is eat, and the other is sleep. So these dudes are just shoveling food down and sleeping to try and recover for their next session.
Right.
And so you're going to accrue adipose tissue. But it's like, otherwise, I think I've thought back to when we were doing like heavy strength training, but we were like doing interning and undergrad and trying to like have a life as well. And I honestly think like we just did not eat or sleep enough.
Yeah.
We're just
agree.
getting wrecked.
I agree. Yeah. Because, dude, I constantly got hurt.
Yeah.
I could not stay healthy doing strength training.
Same.
Because
dude, how many times I've like, my back. Like,
dude, like, we had some good laughs.
Yeah. Like, yeah, just constantly. Because like, it just doesn't work.
Yeah. It's fun to have Cody back.
Yeah, it is.
It was good. So we got Texas Method. Both of you are like about. We got 5x5, both two very popular strength training methods. Third one we're going to talk about today is the Juggernaut Method.
Yes.
Juggernaut Training Systems is probably my favorite. I've read 3 or 4 books, strength training principles of his. It is great. A lot of the way I program for sport performance is based off of his powerlifting program. I just love the dude, Chad Wesley Smith. He's awesome.
I think he's one of the reasons he gives good insight into this is because he comes to powerlifting from a sport background.
Right.
He was a shot putter previously.
And if you guys don't know, shot putters and throwers are wildly athletic, explosive, and strong.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Some of my favorite athletes to work with.
Yeah, they're awesome.
Yeah, because not the sport is most important when you're working with athletes. Like the sport is most important. So like lifting, some people get into it because they like lifting in the way anyone else does.
Yeah.
But most of them are like I'm here to play basketball, or I'm here to play baseball, or I'm here to play soccer.
Yeah.
I just lift because I kind of have to.
Yeah.
But throwers, like it's almost like they realize, they understand the contribution of their strength and their power having an immediate impact on their sport.
Right.
So they get after it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
They're a lot of fun.
I love it.
But so yeah, Chad Wesley Smith, out of California, Juggernaut Training Systems is a company.
Them and Art Renaissance Periodization were
hooked up for a while.
I don't know what happened, but they were tight for quite a while. I bet you they both just got so successful that they were like, we need to be our separate entities. Yeah. That would be my assumption. I don't know.
Yeah.
But when you and I were both interning, that combo, it was like Juggernaut Training System, Renaissance Periodization. I took all my general prep info from RP, and I took all my performance info from Juggernaut.
Yep. Yep. Really good. They have Juggernaut Training System is an only powerlifting.
Yeah.
They do stuff with athletes. They do stuff with strongman. Chad Wesley Smith is a pro strongman as well.
Yeah.
But then you have Max Ada, which is their Olympic coach.
That's right.
And they have high-level Olympic lifters as well. Really, really good.
Yeah.
And from him, he put out. We're gonna talk about the base Juggernaut base, but since then there's Juggernaut 2.0 that's come out. So really solid program. And some of the critiques that we've had on the other ones in terms of like volume and things like that are addressed with the Juggernaut training system or with Juggernaut base.
Yeah.
So he has phases. Accumulation phase.
We love phases.
Love phases, right? Accumulation phase, where, right, there's a lot of ways what you could call it. Work capacity, right? Building a base, all these things, anatomical adaptations. There's all these like cool buzzwords that fitness professionals like to use. But ultimately what you think, I think strength training to me is like you're building a house.
Yeah.
And your accumulation phase is your foundation. Right.
A lot of reps at that weight. Number one, you become more technically proficient.
Yes.
Number two, you are lifting in ranges that are building lean tissue.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So you're building a little bit. I mean, squatting 10 reps, that's a little bit of cardio too.
We cover that up and you only look at the accumulation phase. You're going to think hypertrophy.
Yep. Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. And I love that. That's like his is, instead of just looking at these things and strength in like this short time frame, he says, let's start looking at strength in this time frame.
Right, a longer view.
Right, which, you and I both agree is long-term, baby. The best way to get strong and look good and continue doing so is to continue doing these things.
Yep.
You getting hurt is bad, right? So you having these short windows of training is not good.
Right.
So the best way to stay strong or to keep your physique or stay fit, whatever, so you do continue doing that. That means you need to stay healthy. That means we need to take a long-term approach.
Exactly. Well said. Well said. And these terms for like programming and things, if you're going and reading a book or something like that, you're going to see these terms pop up.
Right.
So from accumulation to intensification.
Okay.
Right. So we're intensifying, we're raising the intensity of the weight that we're using. So, right, the weight's going up. And if the weight's going up, the inverse relationship says that the volume's starting to drop.
Yep.
Right. So what does that look like?
So that would be, so instead of me doing 3 sets of 10 at 75%, right? I'm going to start, so that's 30 reps, right? And let's just take it one workout at a time. Let's say the next weight, I'm going to go 5 by 5.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So now I'm doing 25 reps. Okay. So there's a little less volume, but instead of doing work sets at 75%, I'm doing 82%.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, wow, I did 5 less reps, but the load was way higher. So ultimately, the amount of weight you lifted total for the day is way higher. Right. But it's the volume because the intensity went up.
Right.
So
another way to think about it too, for like listeners that are like, well, I don't know what my 87% is you take the scale. We've talked about it before, the rate of perceived exertion. So a scale to 10 being max effort. So 10 being your 1 rep max, the most weight you could lift. Right. And if you are programming, you just take, so if we're talking, Parker's talking about 80%, you should be 8 out of 10 effort.
Right. That's a great way of doing that.
And one great thing about, I would say, the Juggernaut program for somebody that doesn't know what these things are for them is you go through an accumulation phase. You're going to learn what an 8, what a 7 feels like.
Right.
You rack it and you step out and you're like, I'm not wobbly.
Yeah.
I'm not gasping for air.
Yeah. I
could do another set. Well, then you weren't at an 8.
Right. That's a really good point. That's a really good
I really like it for running. Like there's some great stuff from Jason Durking. He's the director at University of Louisville.
Okay.
And he talked about it in terms of like, other people have said it as well, but like, how can you carry on a conversation while you're running? Like, is it, I don't have to take any kind of breaks in my breathing to talk to you versus now I have to get a sentence out and then I have to breathe. Or now I'm getting a couple words out and then I have to breathe, or I'm getting a word out, or I can't talk to you, right? To measure intensity if you don't know what that means.
Right.
So there's lots of ways to get at intensity.
I like that.
So if you were to like, I'm going to do Juggernaut, you could go get Juggernaut base. You could pull it up and it's going to have percentages and you go, I don't know. The book tells you how to figure that out and you could also get on and find some estimates, or you could use rate of perceived exertion out of 10 and just do it that way until you have it figured out.
I love the RPE scale.
So do I.
What I also do with my online clients when we're doing a strength phase, because a lot of online clients want to do a strength phase, I always get hesitant because number one, I can't see your technique, right? Yeah. And number two, it's like, that's a huge thing. I'm not seeing the way these loads are lifted, so I really don't like prescribing percentages. Yeah. So what I tell them to do, and a lot of people don't really like lifting that heavy. Like a lot of people want to get stronger.
Lifting heavy hurts.
But they're like, I don't really want to like do in 1 RM. That freaks me out.
Yeah.
What you can do is just do a testing day, and I want you to build up. So what I have my clients do, you're going to do 1 rep, but you're just going to build up to the heaviest 1 rep you're comfortable with. It doesn't have to be like, oh, that was the most I can do. That's where you stop. You're like, dude, that was a little sketchy. Okay, that's your 1 RM, and we'll base 80% off of that, right? It doesn't training have max. To be, training max, right? And so it doesn't have to be this like, all right, I had to get in there.
Get my smelling salts, slap me in the face.
No, you don't have to do that. Build a training max, and you're still going to get stronger. And then for newbies in the strength world, you'll start to get the exposure of touching heavy weight more often, and you'll eventually learn to get up to that.
It's a skill.
Max. Yeah, exactly.
It's a skill.
Strength training is a skill.
You talk to any guy that, I mean, even high level dudes.
Yeah.
If they stop touching heavy weight for a while, their technique degrades.
Yeah.
It's just how it works.
That's how it goes.
Yeah.
And so this jug method, you go accumulation.
Yeah.
You go intensification, right? And he gives you a lot of play of like how many times you bench a week, how many times you squat a week, right? You kind of get to decide that. He's got some base programming. Base programming is you get 2 exposures per lift per week, right?
Base was 1.
1. Okay, cool. There's a different one where there's 2. I couldn't remember. So 1 exposure per week, accumulation, intensification, and then his next phase is realization.
Yep. And realization is right, like what it sounds like we're trying to see the results of the program. Like we've done we've done our accumulation phase, we've done our intensification phase. Now we're going to spend this block building up to seeing what we got.
Right. You know what I love about this? It includes deloads.
Huge.
Right?
Huge
a lot of
component.
Powerlifting programs don't include deloads. Deloads are like even arguably more important for powerlifting as opposed to hypertrophy.
Completely agree.
And each phase is what, 4 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks?
Four.
Yeah.
So I've used this base program, not the way it's written, obviously, but like to your point earlier, a lot of like powerlifting stuff will make its way into a variety of other programs in other environments, right? John Jones in the UFC, when he made his bump to heavyweight, they made a fairly big deal out of it. They talked about it a lot. He talked about it a lot of him powerlifting.
Yeah.
Right. To get his strength up when he's like, I'm going to be dealing with bigger guys. I need to be stronger.
Yeah.
Right. So it, from elite fighters to like even distance runners, you'll see instances of powerlifting type of things in their programming because strength is important. And there's a whole world that is dedicated themselves to try and find the optimal way to get as strong as possible.
Yeah.
So realization, we're going to drop again. We're going to drop volume and raise intensity again.
Right. So you went from 3x10 to 5x5 to 4x1.
Yeah.
4x2.
So that you have things that are looking like builds of 5, 3, 1, and then an AMRAP, which again, you might go, that sounds like 5 through 1, but probably got his inspiration from it. Like, there's a lot of borrowing of concepts where you're like, I like this, but it's not enough, so I'm going to put it into this.
Right.
There's the cube method from Brandon Lilly.
Yeah.
But there's also Jugger Cube.
Yeah.
Right. Which is the hybridization of those two programs.
Yeah.
So that's something that like, no matter what you're looking at in terms of things, and there's a lot of free people, strength training community is very robust online and very generous. Is a lot of these programs, you can get Excel sheets already made from somebody that's just built it, put it up there for other people to download.
Right.
You put in your numbers and it'll spit out the program for you with your numbers.
Right.
Which is awesome.
Which
is awesome. But it also, and this is also, I think, a good thing, is it makes it super easy to borrow. Right? Ooh, I like that. I'm going to take that. And ooh, I like that. I'm going to take that. Which ultimately, I think, as we continue to move forward into the future, like you just get better and better programming.
Yep. And again, I think that's a good, go borrow these programs and understand that you have individual limitations.
Yes.
Right. And so like how I would recommend this, you're interested in getting stronger, right? But you don't want to pay for a coach. Okay. Step 1, go find one of these templates. 5-3-1 Juggernaut. I wouldn't recommend Texas or 5x5 personally, but if you like, you do what you want. Right.
Yep.
But then understand that you need to learn to individualize because all of these systems are built for the masses, right? Not you specifically.
Right.
So go grab the program, run the program true, and then the next time you come around to it, have a conversation with the coach. Hit us up on DM.
Yes.
This didn't work, right? Because something's going to pop up that wasn't optimal.
Yep.
There is every program. And you learning how to tweak that is going to be what long-term sets you up for success, right? Maybe it's a technical thing, right? Maybe it's a recovery thing, right? Maybe it could be all sorts of things.
Yeah.
So just understand these programs are great, but they weren't built for you individually. So you're going to need to make modifications no matter who you are.
Yeah. And that's an excellent point. And the modification piece is like, I used Juggernaut as like my base influence for the strength portion for baseball at South Carolina.
How'd it work?
They loved it.
Yeah.
They loved it.
Yeah.
Right. There's a difference. I mean, as a caveat, there's a difference between getting somebody super strong or super jacked and them being good at their sport. Right. So that's why it was a component of what the program was. But in terms of like strength development, I really like the approach.
I do too.
Phasic and deload.
If I'm going to tell if someone's going to come in and say, dude, I'm trying to get into strength training, powerlifting, what's my number one resource? I'm sending it to Juggernaut Training Systems. It's my favorite methodology personally. I think it's the best system out there. It's
really good. It's really good. And it's really good to modify. Because it is phasic, because it is structured that way. You could be like, well, I'm just coming off 20 weeks of hypertrophy.
You need to ease into that shit, homie.
Yeah.
Ease into lifting heavy. You've been lifting at 70%.
I need to hit an accumulation phase, even though it'd be like, well, I'm doing hypertrophy. I don't really. It's like, we're jacking percentages up. We need to do that.
Yes, you do.
We need to do that.
And then, so one point, and you said it, and I forgot to ask you the question. So you ran, and we can end with this. Sorry, we're going a little long, but you ran Juggernaut within a sports performance program.
Yep.
Right. So my guess is you did the primary lift of the day was some sort of Juggernaut methodology, and all the accessories were they movement specific to the sport? Like, explain a little bit of how that happened.
So the initial portion of the lift is power based, and because it was baseball that I'm working out, they're in different groups, right?
Yeah.
Like pitching staff is its own entity.
Yeah,
you have, hitters, you have fielders, like specific things they need to work on.
Yeah.
So general split is you have pitching staff and the rest of the team, and then there's some subgroups in the rest of the team. So my guys would come in, right? I have limited time with them, and there, like, for those of you that don't know, there are rules. There are NCAA rules about the amount of time that they can be with coaching, with coaches. So to maximize the amount of time I have eyes on them, they did their warm-ups and their preventatives and whatever, all that kind of stuff that, maybe sports med has them doing in the weight room, but I'm not out there.
Yeah.
So lift starts, we're power, right?
So
power focus.
Power.
So
speed, you're doing like an Olympic lift, some jumping, some med ball.
All of the above.
Yeah.
Right. So pitching staff is doing a lot of things that are pertinent to their movement patterns.
Yeah.
But non-specific, because if they're specific, it degrades their movement.
Right.
Which is some people don't really grasp.
Yeah.
They're like, let's mimic the movement entirely. It's like, you actually don't want to do that.
Right. Because then that's just more of their sport.
Right. So I'm looking at,
in a weird way.
Yeah. What do they need development on? So a lot of rotational throws, rotational slams, clean high pulls without a catch. So they're just ripping it off the ground and dropping it.
Yeah.
With pitchers, I do a lot of jumps, a lot of horizontal broad jumps, a lot of, so that kind of stuff. So plyos, jumps, throws, things that are lasting no more than 3 sets, couple reps, and they're just ripping it fast. And then strength.
Yeah.
They're primed. CNS is primed. They're moving. Everybody's bouncy, feeling hot, feeling good. We do something strength.
Yep.
Juggernaut was the influence for the strength programming. And then we'd move into accessories, whatever they needed that in that grouping. And then that's the lift. Yeah.
And the accessories were probably movement specific.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And I think that's so much to unpack there, dude. I'm so excited to have this podcast because over the years we can get into it. Because think about it, you said horizontal plyos. Yeah. For plyos, you got horizontal, vertical.
Extensive, intensive.
Just all of the things, But that's a good way of saying, hey, if you do want to get a little stronger, but you're doing these other things, you need to strip Juggernaut down to its one thing, and then you can add a couple little elements.
And you said it well on, I think it was the 5x5 or whatever. It's like a lot of these programs, they're programs on their own focused on strength development, as if you're a power lifter. If you're using these in context of like your youth sport, you're a kid that's coming up and you want to get stronger or whatever, and you're like, I'm going to run Juggernaut and all my sports stuff. Bro, not the way. Yeah. Right? That is like, it needs to be stripped down. Yes. Because it's a program on its own, and I'm taking elements of it and putting it in my program. Right. So it's different. It's different. So strip it down to the bare parts, and that's true of any strength program. If you're like, you know what? Zach sounds stupid, and I can't see Parker unless I log on to YouTube. So I'm going to do the 5x5. Yeah. Cool. But you better strip it down. Yeah. Maybe you're doing one lift a day that's 5x5. You're doing a bench, a squat, a dead, whatever. Maybe you're doing a clean 5x5. I don't know. Something like that. Yep. It's a good way. It's a good point. So this has been a fun conversation. Yeah. We could go on forever. But so hopefully, listeners, you guys learned something. Announcements. I finished Hybrid Base as a training program. Nice. So we get finished a program that's going to be bodybuilding. So basically we're taking Renaissance periodization. Phase 1 is leg, emphasis. Phase 2 is full body emphasis. Phase 3 is, arm emphasis. Okay. And then we're layering in some running. So phase 1 is all accumulation.
kind of like Jug. Phase
Sick,
2 is
sick.
some lactate threshold stuff.
Nice.
And then phase 3 is VO2 max development. So you got 15 weeks of hybrid training. So we're building out, the goal is to build out hybrid base, hybrid strength, hybrid power, hybrid athleticism, and along with the tactical hybrid. So the goal is by the end of the year, 5 programs, all branded, because tactical's done. We just haven't posted it.
Right.
Taking pictures. But that's what we're working on, guys. So if you guys want, have any questions, hit us up on Instagram.
Yep.
Buy me a coffee. Go donate there. Anything else?
No, we appreciate you.
Yeah, appreciate
Tell
you
your
guys.
friends.
Yeah, tell your friends. We're almost at 1,000 listeners, and I think we're going to do a t-shirt drop.
Yeah.
We got to figure out how we're going to do it, but we will.
Yeah, I still haven't heard back from my guy.
Yeah, no worries. All right.
Peace.